Welcome to Hot Topics in International Trade, brought to you by Braumiller Law Group and Braumiller Consulting Group. Hi, this is Bob Brewer with Braumiller Law Group and Braumiller Consulting Group. Welcome to the podcast. With me once again is our DC Counsel, Jim Holbein. How are you, Jim?
I'm great, Bob. Thanks for having me on the show.
No problem. Today, Jim and I discussed things that are going on, and we're just going to call this one Coping with Tariffs. Now, we got to mention the other day, Jim, obviously, the new tariffs that have come down on China.
Yes.
Give us your little synopsis on that first. What do you think?
Well, it's been crazy. I mean, the president raised the tariffs to 145% as a base rate, plus lots of tariffs stacked on top. Said he reached an agreement that it was announced yesterday, the May 12th. Yeah, it was yesterday that they've now reduced those tariffs down to 30%, I believe.
30%.
And at 30% across the board, that's actually at the level that just below, slightly higher than the level between Canada and Mexico under the USMCA. So it's kind of a reflection of the approach that they seem to be taking now, where put on big tariffs, then bring them down when you have some kind of an agreement to show that there's being progress being made on the issues that are being raised by the United States. And then, we'll bring the tariffs down so we can talk and hammer out a bigger deal. And they've given themselves 90 days to hammer out a formal agreement, just like was done in Trump accomplished in the first administration. And so they're looking to do that. And it's early in this administration because that'll make a difference, because the one in 2018 only lasted for a couple of years until Biden won the election, and that agreement was never really honored. So we'll see how this goes. And
10%. What is it? 10% the other way.
Yep.
Yep. So, this obviously it's not going to take care of all of the anti-dumping issues in the meantime, or intellectual property theft and all those things that still need to be discussed. But, we look at from the perspective of, is Z doing a good job of trying to bring that down? I mean, I remember there was a time when there were 7 or 8 Apple stores, duplicates in one city of China. It's like, what?
Yeah.
But, those have gone away.
Right.
So, how are we doing? And I don't have the facts in front of me, data for that right now, but I would think that he's doing a good job of cracking down, because that's one of the big issues.
Well, yeah, and he got the attention of the Chinese government that, hey, we really want you to alter your behavior with our companies and the trade between us. We're your biggest trading partner. Treat us right. Treat us right. Treat us fairly. And that's the point that's being made. That's the point they're trying to do with the America First trade agenda. Whether or not you agree with the tactics, whether or not you agree with it, it's at least having this nominal agreement looks good. Now, Is it substantive? There doesn't seem to be much substance in it from what little we know, because I think that's what they're going to try. They've agreed to reach an agreement, is I think what we can really say at this point. And they've given themselves 90 days. They've got maybe a rough outline of where they want to go, but they don't have the details, because I used to do trade negotiations, and added 90 days with China is like a miracle, and just insane, because the various rival groups within both countries won't even have their act together to inform the administration of what they want in 90 days.
I know, this is complicated.
See what they get.
So we have, all the calls that have been coming in. I jump on a lot of those, but it's mitigation strategies now. So, Jim, let's look at it from the perspective of, compliance professionals about navigating through this. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's a lot of things you can do in the interim, a lot of them are pretty straightforward, and they're the things you should be doing as compliance professionals with CBP and other agencies already. So you should be sure to confirm the tariff classification of the products, both that you import and that you export. Make sure you audit the codes on your shipments and update on the sourcing, because the sourcing is going to be really critical.
Yes, it is.
Go further into this regime, because tariffs are on like 70 countries at 10%. They're higher on some products in Mexico and Canada, and duty-free in others. And origin's going to be a big deal, as particularly if you have sourcing from FTA countries. That would be a really important thing. If you can prove your sources from that FTA country, that's going to be a really helpful thing.
Right.
And so rules of origin and your certification is going to be good. Doing some tariff engineering, if you can ensure that you have in any country where you're producing, if you have domestic content into the product from that country, that's going to do a lot to help you to get substantial transformation, which is the buzzwords you need to get origin of that country. So
Yeah.
it's going to become something that's going to be, it's already a big deal. It's going to be even more important. And
Yeah, and and the discussions that I mean, like, give an example. Like,
sure,
I think it was on the call the other day with battery when they moved the from China to Vietnam, but there's an essential element within that battery, the cell, that regardless of you moving that into Vietnam, customs is not going to consider that substantial transformation.
right,
You look at it's almost not, it's not so much percentages, but what it is the essential elements that go into the manufacturing of that. Is that substantial enough to dictate that, yes, it is now country of origin, Vietnam or Thailand or Malaysia or whatever? These are the keys that we're discussing with clients is how does that work, kind of thing.
right. And it's going to be easier for some manufactured products than other. Anything using rare earths and, these critical minerals that have been identified. China is the biggest producer of critical minerals on the planet.
Oh, yeah.
And they've got a lot of not most of the major deposits that are really being mined are in China too. So, anything that you make that has critical minerals, and that includes smartphones, they're going to be, very, very hard to prove they're not products of China. And so
Yep.
that's going to be why, though, there will clearly be some sort of a part of that deal with China that will include critical minerals. That's going to have to be because they've got export controls on it. There's a bunch of stuff going on where that's like at the heart of what an agreement should address.
Right. Takes me back in these discussions to when Section 301 first came into play, and you'd fly off to Washington and sit in front of the Commerce Department, try to convince them that your client nowhere else on the planet can they source these products from. It has to be China,
Right.
who's, the capital of the world for sourcing. And if you could prove that, that was the exemption,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
So what about dealing with CBP through all this, Jim? Let's get
Yeah,
thoughts on
there's,
that.
you've got to, they're going to be more aggressive on enforcement. They have to be because of
Yeah.
all the stuff going on. They're busy. They're, doing a lot of stuff. So getting their attention is going to be one of the biggest problems. Some of the things you can do, implement a first sale for export program. So your first sale determines your price. That can help you to keep your price down for valuation for the purposes of tariffs. So that's an important part of a strategy. You can switch to monthly periodic statements that on all of your imports. You just do one statement, and that kind of aggregates things, and you don't have then multiple payments where you can mess up and miss one or be late or miscalculate, throw everything off. You just do it all once a month, and it can be a really good way of coping with this. Prepare for, just make sure in your compliance work that you're ready for an audit pretty much all the time. Be doing your work so that it's, capable of being looked at fairly quickly. Use of FTAs as the tariff program goes forward, and we negotiate with more of these countries. I would expect that any FTA where you can prove origin of the goods in the FTA country, then
Right.
we're going to get duty-free treatment still, just like Mexico and Canada have done. So that's another really important consideration, I think. You can utilize free trade zones. Our consultant, the vice president of our consulting group, Robert Stein, is a thorough expert on this, and
Yes.
helping all kinds of companies with using both FTZs and bonded warehouses.
Right.
And so it's a good strategy. It can help a lot of countries. And just really pay attention, track the exclusion and waiver notices and how to disputes, when you receive a document from customs that, disputes your duties, be ready to act and work with us or whoever you wish to, go ahead and deal with that.
Right.
Because
Right.
and there you go. And then you can also deal with your contract clauses. Make sure that there is something in your contracts that deals with who has responsibility for tariffs, because it's the importer of record, unless you have a variance in your contract that changes that, and that they somehow will then your supplier will contribute. There you go.
All right.
That's an
Gotcha. Well, I mean, think about that then. If companies want to pursue advocacy or litigation, what should they then consider?
Well, yeah, it's what you said when you were going to commerce for exclusions. I
Yeah.
think that you should be working with trade associations in particular to lobby the White House and lobby USTR to get an exclusions process. For goodness sake, with all this stuff going on, that should be part of this. Uh,
Yep.
Given the speed with which they want to act, it's going to be really tough because it's going to be hard for the White House and USTR to have enough bodies, even if they go to every other agency in the government. That's going to be really difficult to have enough bodies to talk to all the countries that are involved in this. It's not a multilateral negotiation. It's 70 or 80 bilaterals. And that's really tough. That takes a lot of people, a lot of time, and it can be difficult to do. You should lobby Congress. I mean, Congress has bowed out. I just saw an article yesterday that there is a Republican bill in Congress to take back Article 1 responsibility for tariffs and abrogate the president's authority to set tariffs. Say, no, it doesn't work. And that's going to be real interesting if that were to pass. Uh,
Yes, it will be.
Using trade associations to help you is a really important deal. And companies need to step forward and work together through the trade association to make their views known, respond to Federal Register notices for comments on all the Section 301 investigations USTR is doing. If you want to go for legal challenges, there's a big set of cases made by the states on state procurement that's going to the CIT to challenge the IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. That's the authority that the president has used for most of the tariffs around the world. And they're challenging that across the board. So we'll see how that goes. I think that there are other mechanisms. There's a major question doctrine. Does CBP actually have the authority to do what it's doing? Because it's in excess of the president's authority to tell them to do that. And so that's going to be real important. There's de facto abrogation of all these free trade agreements by unilateral imposition of tariffs. Does that provide a basis for a legal challenge under the implementing legislation of those acts? So there's a lot of ways doing it. You can, if you're going to challenge, use the monetary damages. The increase in the payments you have to make and the increased duties can be a measure of your monetary damages. So for making
Gotcha.
a claim, and they have to be enough. And if you're looking for an injunction, you got to prove you got some irreparable harm, that you're paying at such a high rate that it's going to bankrupt your company, and that's an irreparable harm. Those kind of things are going to be critical, and the courts are denying injunctions unless you can show irreparable harm. So
Okay.
there you go.
Well, this newfound agreement that's pending and takes me back to an image that I've been writing about China for probably the last, I don't know, decade,
Yeah.
and I always saw that handshake between China and the US, and I'd put in my headline, when pigs fly. Well, I actually used it yesterday when I sent a blast out, like, you know what? Why not now? Where do you think this is going, Jim? Why not now that we've all had an opportunity to see the bigger picture of how it hurts us, not just the US and China, but globally when we can't make this work between these two huge economies?
Well, I think the key is going to be two things. One is China. What do they got to do? Well, they've been acting, they're the biggest economy in the world, or second biggest, now, and they're still seeking um, uh, developed country treatment. And that's absurd. They shouldn't be looking at that. They're a major economic power. They do not run their economy quite like a market economy. But that said, we need to adapt the rules so that they can fit, but they need to be able to do business on a fair basis with everybody. If companies are coming into China, they've had to give up all their intellectual property, and that helped them leapfrog generations of research they would have had to done. They just took it from from foreign companies and then applied it in all their work. And so they've been able to develop really quickly by doing that. Okay, we all get it, and now you're there. Stop it. Stop doing that. That's not the right thing. You use your own innovation. You got 1 billion people. If they can't innovate, then you aren't worth being in the economy. What the hell? You don't have to just use everybody else's innovation. You guys do it too, and let's license that stuff and share it, and let the rest of the countries benefit from that. So I think there's a lot China can do to reform their behaviors to act more like the size of economy that they are, and the importance of their economy in the world. They should be leading, not following, but in a healthy way, not to take us into authoritarian, but to take us into a multilateral world where everybody benefits.
Yeah.
US, on the other hand, unilateral actions taken and threatening and coercive behavior, yeah, it's kind of what they needed to do to get everybody's attention. I understand why they're doing it. Is it the policy for the long term? Of course not. You can't be a bully the whole time. On the other hand, when nobody's listening to you and they don't believe that you're going to take any action, and Europe is not paying its fair share on, military expenditures, and other countries aren't doing their fair share. It's the same with China. China's not doing what it's supposed to be doing under the WTO agreements, and what it committed to do is to join the world fraternity of economic uh, participants in the global economy. They fix that, we won't come back at them, and we'll play fair too. And we've proven we can play fair as a country over many decades.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's it.
Gotcha. Well, Jim, we are out of time.
I
I
figured.
appreciate you stopping by. But we got it. Jim and I have another one coming up. I mean, we've been chatting about this. So, what this next one's going to be is just terrified by tariffs. So stop back in for, I guess, part 2 of this discussion here. Thank you. See you later.